All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this week's Tips and Tricks webinar. Today's topic is domain password reset via remote access VPN. Please use the Q&A chat in the Zoom session for any questions during the webinar. We'll make sure we answer those. Our presenter today is an SE who covers New Jersey, Brian McElhair. Brian, take it away.
All right. Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Tips and Tricks. As Rob mentioned, my name is Brian McElhair. I'm one of the New Jersey commercial SEs covering the central and southern New Jersey region. So today, I'm going to present a trick instead of just a, looking at a product and seeing how we can implement it. And what I mean by that is I'm going to show you how to leverage a feature within one of our security products, the IPsec VPN client, to help with resetting domain passwords remotely. So with the pandemic in the last year, this seems to be a challenge for a lot of companies because in an ideal world, all the people would be going into the office, and if they had a problem with their password, once they're on the corporate network, they're able to reset their password. But being remote does, provide a challenge for the network administrators. So, and with the pandemic last year, you saw 100% of the workforce working from home. And even today, most companies still have a majority of their employees still working at home. The security policies to enforce password changes are still in play. A lot of companies still have 60 to 90-day password changes. And you still have people that will forget their passwords. And being remote, it's a challenge. So I'm hoping that today's tips and tricks will give you an alternative way to perform that task. All right, so let's begin. So today's agenda, I'm going to go over a scenario very similar to what I opened up with, understand the challenges to that and how we can leverage the feature within the VPN client called Secure Domain Login to help us with that challenge. I'm also going to go over a brief overview of Secure Domain Login. The benefit of Secure Domain Login, there's a lot of features to it. We're only going to use one little piece of it that will help us to connect to the corporate network for the reset of the password. But the Secure Domain Login has a lot of other features and functions that you may want to incorporate into your security policy. Then we're going to go through each step of how to enable the Secure Domain Login on the client. And then we're going to go through that scenario slide by slide to understand the changes that are necessary to get this to work. Once I complete that, we're going to go over a demo, real-time demo. You're going to see it in action on how this is done. And then if time allotted, we can go through question and answers at the very end. And if not, I do have my email at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email on the topic. All right. So the scenario that we're going to go over is a remote user forgets their password. This happens a lot. I don't think there's an IT network administrator out there that hasn't experienced this. A user changes their password on a Friday. It's a long weekend, could be a holiday weekend. They come in the next day and they don't remember what they changed it to. Now, if this was at normal conditions, the person would be reporting to the office, the laptop's on the corporate network, and they have direct access to the domain controller. They just call up the help desk. Hey, I forgot my password. They're on the network. They changed it in the domain controller, and then the person puts in the new password, and they're done. Everything is good. But with the challenge now is that now the person is working from home, and if they forget their password, they don't have the ability to log into their device to even to launch the VPN connection. So that's where the problem comes into play is how do I get the device onto the network? And if you don't have this feature turned on, most likely you're going to have to direct them into the office to get their password reset. But that's the key element here, getting them connected to the corporate network prior to them logging onto the device. So let me give a brief overview of what secure domain login is. Secure domain login is a feature within the IPsec client. It's been around for a very long time. This is not something that's new. It's been with the client for many years. But its sole purpose wasn't just for the password reset. It was really to simulate a remote user's connection to the corporate domain. So once you launch this, it actually will simulate to the end user as if they were sitting in the office. So all their network drives, all their network printers are available now without them having to manually set them up, because they're basically connecting directly to the domain. Now, with the SDL, with the VPN connection established, all this communication is done securely over a VPN tunnel. And this provides that means for us to reset the password going forward. All right. So in this scenario, there are some requirements. Again, we need to use the IPsec VPN client. This client can be installed two different ways. One, you can download the standalone VPN client off of our user center, or you can deploy the VPN client through our Harmony endpoint product. If you have our endpoint product installed, you can select the blade and it will actually install the VPN client onto the end user. If not, they have the VPN client installed on their device. The only thing you would need to do is enable it, and I'm going to show you how to enable it through the IPsec VPN client. The only other thing is, because you are communicating to the Active Directory, you will need a rule in your firewall that will allow that type of traffic to pass from the VPN clients, which most likely will be using an office mode or an IP NAT pool IP address internally. You want that to have access to the Active Directory. And these are the ports that are needed to perform this exercise. NetBIOS, LDAP, Kerberos, DNS, because most clients are pointing to the Active Directory for their DNS, and also for any kind of client communicating with the Active Directory, it needs to be able to look up the name of the domain controller. I threw an ICMP in here just to test out through my lab. But these are the requirements that you need to get this to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to enable the SDL within the client through a manual way. There are ways that you can push this out to your not your customers, I mean their end users automatically through using a GPO. There's a file that you can push out. You can also use a tool called VPN config that you can pull down also from the user center. And what you can do is you can create a MSI file that you can install on the end user, and it will have the SDL already enabled. So how do we enable it? So if you have the VPN client already installed, whether that is the standalone VPN client or the endpoint version of it, in both cases, you're going to see the yellow lock that's on the taskbar. And that is for the client itself. You want to click on that lock. Now, with the endpoint product, because it's a member or a blade, a security blade within a suite of security blades, there are a couple additional screens that you're going to have to go through to get to the settings page where you can enable this. So I'll point them out to you. But in both cases, you're going to click on the yellow lock. This page is strictly for the endpoint VPN. You're going to click on Display Overview. It's going to bring you to the overview page, which then displays all the security blades that are installed. Now, we're going to just concentrate on the remote access VPN blade. So we're going to click on that. And it's going to bring you up to the encryption settings page, and you're going to click on Manage Settings. Now, at this point, both VPN clients are going to direct you to this page. So this is the same on both. You're going to click on the Advanced tab. I just put a note on there. This is where both sync up. You're going to hit the Advanced tab, and then it's going to give you the screen in which you can now enable it. So again, this is the manual process that you can enable it. Now, you can use this if you just want to enable it just for the one-time password change. You can have like a network administrator. Sometimes they have like a administrator account on everyone's laptop. Most corporations have that, just in case if, in this case, like a user locks themselves out, they can get into the machine using that account that's on the laptop. If that's the case, if you do not have the SDL installed and you want to use the password reset, you just have them to log in as that account, and then they can come in and actually enable this. Once SDL is installed, we're going to do the next steps. All right, so steps restoring the password. So we're going to go back to the scenario that we were talking about. End user forgets their password, they changed it, can't get into the box, and we need to reset it. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to call the help desk. So they're going to call and ask, hey, I need my password reset. I changed it, can't remember it. Can you reset it? Help desk administrator is going to change that password, but now that password is only going to be on the domain controller. The end user doesn't have any connection to it. So what they're going to have to do is that they're going to have to use the secure domain login app to launch the VPN prior to them logging onto their device. As you can see, we do have SDL running. You can see the two screens on the bottom here. If you don't see that, SDL is not running. But if you do see the two screens, it's referred to as the network sign-in screen. This also shows that I have the explicit secure domain login installed, which means that it's not going to, it's automatically enabled if I click on it. Like it's running, but it won't launch the VPN client unless I click on it. There's two modes in which secure domain login is configured, and I'm going to talk about them later on in the presentation, but they're implicit and explicit. But for this exercise, we're going to use the explicit version or mode of secure domain login. So you're going to instruct the end user to click on those double screens, and that's going to launch the VPN. As you can see, they didn't log into the device yet, but the VPN client is going to launch and allow them to log in. They're going to be displayed the login page for the VPN. They're going to leverage the new password that the help desk just created. The reason for that is that the gateway authenticates against the domain controller. So whatever the help desk puts in, that's what the VPN is going to use for authentication. So you put in the new password here, you hit connect. Now the VPN tunnels up. Now we're right as if the end user actually got in their car and drove to the office. They are directly connected onto the corporate network. They have full access to the domain controller. And now any changes that are done on the domain controller will be able to be seen by the end user. So in this case, the password change. It will push them back to the login, the Windows login screen. The end user types in their new password, and their desktop will appear. All right. Now, the next step is something that I always recommend. Not sure if it's needed, but I always side on the side of caution that if you change some password like that, I always like to make sure that it's cached on the box. You don't want to run through these steps again. So up on the Microsoft site, they do have this means of syncing up the passwords. I always recommend to do that. You just do a Control-Delete, you lock the screen, and then you unlock the screen by using the new password. Then you know for sure that the new password is on your box and you won't have that issue again. So secure domain login options. We talked a little bit about them, and now I'm going to go into some detail about the different options and how you can implement them and in some cases disable them. So secure domain login, again, 2 modes. We have the explicit mode, which is what we're going to use in this exercise to reset the password. And this only is launched when you click on those 2 screens. So that's explicit. It's basically a pre-login access provider, a PLAP, and it's on the login screen. Implicit mode. This is not configurable in the client. It's automatically enabled the first time that the secure domain login piece actually communicates with the domain controller. So this is going to be running. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is if you do turn this on and you leave it running on your clients, they're going to be prompted all the time that when they log on to their machine, it's going to want to launch the VPN client to connect to the domain every single time. Now, if you want to use secure domain login for all of its features and functions, then that's fine. Leave it the way it is. It's already done. You don't have to make any modifications. And I highly recommend that the documentation that I have at the end of the webinar to read. And you may want to incorporate secure domain login in your security policy. But if you just want to use it just for the password changes to help with the network administrator's task, then you really only need the explicit mode. So to do that, there's ways that it is disabled automatically. So implicit mode is on automatically by default, but it does disable by itself if it's connected to an internal network. So if you have it running and the person does go into the office, the client can determine if it is behind the gateway 2 ways. You can have location network awareness turned on. And what this does is it actually identifies all the networks that are behind the gateway, and the client will read this information. And if it sees that it's established on one of those networks, it knows that it does not require the VPN. It's on the internal network. SDL will not enable. If you already have the VPN established. So if the VPN client already has a tunnel, it will not launch the SDL. So if you have auto connect already enabled on your VPN client, most likely when they log in, that auto connect will start up the VPN client. So SDL will not engage at all. And then the last thing, if there's no network, if you disable the wireless and they're not connected onto any network out onto the internet, SDL will not run. But there's another way to turn this off as well. And that's by making a simple change on the gateway. You use a editor to modify a file that's on the gateway. And I did this for this exercise to show how you can actually turn off the implicit mode for the secure domain login. This is on the gateway side. You're going to modify the track client 1 TTM file. This actually does all the different features and functions within the client itself, and you can modify that on the gateway. So each time the client actually communicates with the gateway, it actually pulls down this information. So if you make any modifications to this file, the next time the client talks to the gateway, it'll actually pull down those configurations and stores them within the client. So to modify it, you're going to SSH to the gateway, and then you're going to use either a VI editor or whatever editor that you feel comfortable using. You're going to modify this file. Now, when I checked my gateway, these lines were not in there. So you're going to have to add these lines, and it's in this format. You just follow the format within the file itself. You put in these lines, you save the file, and then after you save it, you must install the policy. That does a sync within the gateway so that when the clients connect the next time, it actually will pull down all these configuration changes. So I just did it real quick. I always recommend you make a backup of this file. Now, this file controls the VPN clients. So if you make a mistake, you definitely want to have a fallback. So I always make a backup file just in case if I accidentally did a typo or something or caused a problem within the file. Once you finish it, push the policy, the new track client file is now enabled, and now the users can now leverage that. If you don't have the implicit secure domain login activated, disabled, and it's activated, I'm going to show you what this it's going to look like for the end user. And this is if you want it activated, they'll see this as well. So the next time they log in, they put in their password, they're going to see this little window. And what it's doing is it's thinking that you want to connect onto the corporate network before you log onto the box, and that so that the domain controller can pass down all your domain information, the network shares, the network printers, all that information that's up on the domain. Once you log in, it will be passed down to the laptop. You can also cancel from here, but it may come up as a nuisance to your end user. So if you're only going to use the secure domain login for the password reset, you may want to disable it. If not, you're going to probably get a lot of phone calls, how to disable this. And then it's just going to ask them to log in. Now, again, if you have the VPN with the auto connect, you won't see that SDL prompt. You're going to actually see the VPN prompt come up. You're just going to see this window. And once SDL sees that this VPN connection is up, it will not launch the secure domain login. So with all that, a lot of information, it does provide an alternative way that you can do this password reset. And if you have the VPN already installed, it's a simple little modification to the client to enable it. And I think it's well worth it. And again, the documentation, I think it will be good for you to go through all the different features and functions that secure domain login provides. It will, I think, benefit in the long run. All right. At this point, I'm going to start up my demo, and I'm going to show you how the scenario rolls out and how do we leverage the secure domain login to help us with the password reset. So the first thing that a remote user is going to do is they're going to call the help desk. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our domain controller. We're going to reset the password, right? They're going to go in, we're going to reset it. Okay. And hit OK. And now the password has changed, but that information hasn't been sent down to the laptop yet. It cannot be used yet. All right. So the help desk person does that. And now they have to instruct the remote user to connect. I'm sorry, I'm actually spinning up. I have to use my virtual server, my ESX box to demonstrate. So here is my workstation. So this is simulating a remote user. That's this is an isolated environment. This device is actually connected behind its own firewall. Then it connects into the firewall that's in front of my data center to VPN in. And then the domain controller is behind my data center firewall. So the end user will click, get to the login page. And as like I shown you in the presentation, SDL is running on this device. We have the network sign-in piece. We're going to click on that. And now we're going to use the new password that I just put into the domain controller. And because the gateway is going to authenticate using the domain controller, we should get an authentication. And now the VPN connection is established. And now I'm connected to the corporate network. All right. At this point, the end user just has to log in using the new password that the help desk administrator gave them. Put that in. And they're in. Now, to show that the secure domain login implicit mode is not enabled, I'm going to reboot the box because that's a requirement. It has to reboot one time and then the SDL would come up. So now you saw how we were able to rectify it. Now, again, if you want to sync up the cache credentials, because this is a VM, I'm going to have to send Control-Delete. I hit lock. I put in the new password. And I'm back in. All right, so now I'm going to probably be best if I did it here. All right, there's always something not running right. All right, I'm going to restart it. There's not much on this, so it'll only take a few seconds. So while that's running, again, the explicit piece will always be running on the Windows login screen, but the implicit, because I made that modification to the gateway, the track client 1 TTM file, it's not going to require the SDL to launch automatically. So you won't see that feature starting up. So while this is booting up, Rob, is there any questions?
Actually, no. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat there and we'll get to those. But nothing yet. You're dazzling everybody with your skills. Actually, you were muted the whole time. Can you do all that again?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So here we go. After a reboot, we're going to launch. As you can see, the explicit SDL is still running. We're going to log in. The new password. And at this point, the SDL implicit mode would have launched the VPN client. You would have saw that little banner page would have came up, asked you to connect to the VPN. And now we're in. So you never got that banner page. So that's the benefit of writing those couple lines of code into the gateway file so that you don't have to have that little banner popping up and possibly annoying your end users. But SDL is in place so that just in case if they do forget their passwords, they can you can reset it remotely. They don't have to come into the office. So here I'm going to show, I'm going to disconnect the VPN. Oh, actually the VPN is down. And as you can see, if I come up here, I do my IP config, you can see that I'm isolated. I'm not on the 192.168.1 network. Only the VPN was able to do that. And I can't ping my 192.168.1.69, which is my domain controller, can no longer ping that. You could still have the option to launch your VPN if you want. You can do a connect. So it doesn't impact your ability to, there we go. There we go. And then we used a new password. We should be connected now. That's connecting. And now if I do an IP config, you'll see that I have my NAT IP address, the NAT pool address, and I should be able to ping 192.168.1.69, and I can ping. Again, real quick, the rules that you need on the firewall just for the SDL to work. And for the password resets, you just need to have this rule in your rule base. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you,
This.
Brian. I know we went a little bit over there, but good information. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to, this is the document that has all the information on SDL. So you can go up to the user center, you can download it. It is a little bit of dated, as you can see that it starts with E80.72, but in this exercise, I was running E84.71 on both the VPN client for the Harmony endpoint. Pages 53 through 56 is solely just on SDL. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or one of your SCs. They can forward me the email and I'll be happy to respond.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Talk to your SC. Brian, me, you have my email address also, so we'll make sure we get you the answers you need. So thank you, Brian. I'll send the follow-up email with any reference content in the recording link. Due to July 4th coming up, we're going to have our next session in 4 weeks. So that will be on July, I think, 16th. So you'll see an invitation for that soon. So everyone enjoy the holiday, and we'll catch up with you in about a month. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.